Hello, everybody, and welcome to After the Rolls, our post-session discussion, I guess, for the Low Rollers Live Dungeons & Dragons podcast adventure. My name is Danny Allinson. I'm here with the whole gang. Today, we are going to be talking about Narroth. Chris, you want to go ahead and start off with some of the questions we have about Narroth?
First, I need to change the music.
Okay.
Sailing. Okay, we'll go to sailing music. Okay. First things first, we'll give out XP. Just because I always seem to forget that. It'll be $750 for this session.
So what does that bring us up to? Because I've missed a couple sessions.
75,675.
What's 11?
85.
85. We got plenty of time to go.
Let's just fight a couple of dragons and level up.
Cool.
Yeah, Narroth got any more relatives we can kill?
Yeah.
Got a brother, man?
I think we can take a brief moment to just have a quick recap about the last scene that just happened. Do you just before we question John thoroughly, what did you guys think about that last thing where we talked about fears and we talked about family and that sort of thing? Danny Allinson, why don't you give me something?
I mean, I thought it was good. It's good to have a clear understanding of what all the characters are feeling. That doesn't always come out through the dialogue or the roleplay that we have with each other. So to have these moments where the characters have to face themselves, I think is very telling, not only in what they experience, but how they react to that experience. So I think it's a good place for us to see what each character is afraid of. But I also think that next week, when they wake up from these nightmares, how they react to what they dreamed of will also be very telling of the characters.
Right. The kind of goal is to not only give the players something to talk about from a meta sense, but also give the listeners a chance to explore the characters that they really aren't going to be able to explore any other way besides things like this. So over the course of however long this campaign ends, I kind of want to revisit one-on-one meta narratives somehow to be able to have discussions like this, because I think it was really telling. I learned things about the character that I didn't quite know about. I knew about like the family history and that sort of thing, but I'm getting a better idea. But other Danny, what did you think about having that brief conversation? I think I put you on the spot first, so.
Yeah, you did. What did I think? Well, first of all, it was definitely something that would shake Astor to his core, mainly because the scene that happened during the session is definitely considered one of his happiest moments in life currently. So the fact that he just saw something that was pretty much a 180 in the form of Lana passing away, that's definitely gonna be it will definitely affect him quite a bit. So it'll be interesting to see how he reacts the next day.
Cool. Any other reactions to that before we get to John?
Not really. It's just very shocking, quite honestly.
Cool. From anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to speak up really quick.
Sure.
In terms of Zarrius as a little event, I feel like for him he saw what went on in Wessex. I believe that's what this town is.
Wexham.
Wexham, my bad. And he saw what went on and saw that we had liberated it from said evil, and then to see that it went back to being even more evil is kind of a concern that he will have to figure out for himself. But also just the idea that they then wanted my blood since I am different and ended up killing me. I could see Zarrius as a player, in terms of my character. I could see Zarrius reacting negatively, obviously, to that just because he would die. But then also, I could see him thinking about his afterlife events, per se, in terms of where he might end up, what might end up happening to him after he would die, which he has thought about previously, but I think it would probably be a little bit more prevalent now that he has seen this event.
That's an interesting way to interpret this whole scenario. Yeah, we haven't really talked about like life after death, for what that means in this particular lore setting. It'll be interesting to approach that.
Yeah, so that's kind of I have thought about it previously, and Chris and I have discussed it a little bit in terms of my character, but the whole idea of afterlife, per se, of each individual character and what they could potentially be is something that I might be a little bit more drawn to as Zarrius in the coming days that since this event.
Interesting. I know what you're talking about now. It'll be an interesting concept to explore. Any other thoughts? All right. John, hi.
Hello.
So we talked a little bit about Narroth's father in the session. We talked a little bit about the Thieves Guild heritage. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your ideas about coming up with these topics? I think you pitched me over lunch one day that you wanted to be this half-dragon character, but why don't you tell me a little bit about it?
Okay, so when I was kind of thinking up a character for this campaign a long time ago, I actually was kind of, whenever I create a character, I kind of delve into one character type specifically. So for this one, I was trying to delve into heritage a little bit. My character draws power from his heritage, and now that when I wrote my backstory, I said he was a half-dragon, but I left the both parents unknown, so we could explore that a little bit more. So it was definitely my intention that we go through this heritage thing, but I never thought of having the different aspects of who he was to be connected with power until Chris introduced that actually in the storyline.
Yeah,
So-
I kind of remember that. I think you pitched me the idea, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because it was quite a while ago, where you wanted him to dwell into like the greed of the red dragon and wanted to dwell into that power, because I think originally he was evil, and I think we sort of stepped away from that. But yeah, tell me a little bit about what you were originally intending.
So originally I was intending for this, I mean, obviously he's a red dragon, so my intentions were going to be he has the same vices as a red dragon would, which are a little bit more specific than a human's. And that's definitely going to be part of who he is, but my original intentions were for him to be a neutral character and kind of have these interactions wherever they go kind of influence where he ends up. So he started as a very neutral character. I mean, he's technically a little bit on the chaotic side, mostly because he makes his money from doing illegal things. But that was simply for the purposes of gathering more wealth, which was something that his heritage would want him to, or would require him to want. He would like, he does have a temper because that's something his heritage kind of dictates. But other than that, the way he went, either more into burning everything and saving consequences to later, or more thoughtfully, which I think is how he ended up, that was going to be a result of the journey.
Cool. And we introduced the human side from the very first get-go through Rameth. He introduced you to potentially channeling that human side. What do you think the character is becoming now based on that scene with Rameth way back when?
Yeah, so I think Rameth definitely influences Narroth in order to be a little bit more inclusive. He tends to be very headstrong and goes in one direction, and the idea that he has to kind of pull from 5 different directions instead of one direction makes him, it was something he never would have thought of on his own. So he would say, you know, I'm going to go straight for this, or I'm going to go straight for this. And this is kind of a progression where I think Narroth is definitely going to be trying to, okay, I want to pull from this and from this and from this third thing over here. How do I embody all of these aspects of who I am at once?
And do you like that direction for the character? I know I kind of forced it upon you, and it's kind of too late to go back now, but what do you think about that?
No, I really liked it. You mentioned Rameth being the beginning, but I think if I remember correctly, we were actually going against Dementia, Nara's father, and that's when this actually first cropped up. I had an issue where I was like, well, I basically my whole character's thing is to burn it with fire, and this is a fire dragon who's immune to all things fire. I'm going to be useless here unless I can do something else. And so we kind of this is the first establishment of us thinking that Narroth could do something else with his elements. That's the first instance that we turned the elements. So that was the beginning of this. And so when when Narroth was confronting his father and embracing the human side, that's when we saw the water and the ice spells start to take form. And I think that was definitely the turning point in Narroth's journey.
Cool. When you pitched the character, I think we're okay to reveal this. You pitched that at the end of the game, you wanted him to sort of become a full, kind of like a full-blooded dragon. Would you tell me a little bit more about that end goal, and then maybe tell me if you still think that's the end goal?
Yeah, so when I first envisioned Narroth, I was thinking of somebody who learns more and more about where he came from, embracing that more and more until he was officially one of them. So an orphan almost receiving his identity, an outcast, being welcomed back into the fold. And now that Narroth has taken this turn, it is definitely it's definitely less of a specifically red dragon thing and more of a communal accepting who he is, which is partly based on what he was born with. So it's more of a self-acceptance rather than acceptance from others.
Yeah, we assigned you a character theme. Would you like to tell me a little bit about that and how you're playing into it?
Sure. If I could remember what that character theme is, let me look at my notes.
We described it as being like wholeness.
Yeah. So, I think a lot of that is going to play into how Narroth sees himself and how he applies himself. I mentioned earlier about Narroth going in one direction and just doing that. He only concentrated on his dragon heritage and went full steam ahead there, but now he has to embrace not only his dragon heritage but his human heritage. He has to push himself in different directions that he would not normally have gone. He is he is a smooth talker and he's a strong fighter, but he may not necessarily be the most intelligent or wisest person. Most of the reason that he doesn't usually talk much or doesn't usually come up with many ideas that he forces upon other people is because he's not actually that smart, that anything. He can talk his way around anyone, but coming up with ideas, he tends to be a little bit short-sighted and passionate only in one area. So throughout his journeys, he's kind of being forced to be expanded a little, and that's definitely something that he's actively trying to do in his magic, but is finding that in order to expand his magic into more areas, he definitely has to expand himself as a person.
And how do you think this theme of wholeness applies to the arc of forgiveness?
I think...
Or redemption. I don't know why I said forgiveness. Redemption.
I think that this sense of wholeness is... I mean, Narroth is definitely thinks in one direction. So once Dementia did his whole thing where he had to, where he was trying to do whatever he could in order to gain his power, Narroth is like, all right, at this point, I am going to think that you are an evil person, and one of the things that I am now doing with this group of people is destroying evil people who are threatening to, kill everyone. But I think with redemption, that this is going to be accepting who his father was, and maybe even embracing it enough to learn from it. So instead of rejecting it outright, he is maybe going to, invite the idea of who his father was fully in, and I examine it a little bit more, take the things he likes from that.
Yeah, anything you want to see for Narroth coming up? Maybe some sort of growth specifically? Anything you want to hint to our streaming audience, or anything like that?
Well, not trying to give too much away, I am hoping that Narroth's quest for a general sense of redemption and to get to know the idea of his father better is... I'm hoping that it's definitely going to be a little bit more played out, especially when we see that there are people that we can communicate back from who have already passed on. So Narroth is definitely looking forward to that event with trepidation and excitement.
Cool. That is all I have as far as questions concerned. If anyone wants to add anything, either about Narroth as a character or about the session itself, it'd be interesting to hear maybe a little bit about the other players' reaction to Narroth. But Rachael has been our longtime listener before she has joined the campaign. What did you think of Narroth, without being biased?
That's a little hard. I know. No, I've liked, especially when this was, before it was on the live stream, but when you guys were in Jingzhou and he was really trying to focus on balance, and it was really interesting how when he got to the red room in the tower, that just went out of whack, like totally out of the window. And I like that because that's true life. Like we try things, and we get into a high stress situation, and if we haven't really mastered something, it just goes away.
Cool. And Alan, you've been in this campaign from the beginning, and you've seen both Narroth and Astor as well, and their complete character growth. What do you think about Narroth as a character now compared to what he was then? Alan? All right. So that is all I have. So why don't you, if we have any other questions, we can close this out, Danny.
I don't have anything else, so I think that's it. Thank you so much for joining us after the rolls. Once again, if you'd like to join us for our regular sessions every Monday night, 9 p.m. Pacific time, or we rebroadcast on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. So you can find us there. You can also catch up by going to the links below over to our YouTube channel. You can listen to past sessions so that you get the full story. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us here after the rolls, and we'll see you again next week.